Hi, I'm Feroz Khan from ITRAC Recruitment, and welcome to the Low Code Podcast, where we're dedicated to increasing awareness and appreciation of the power of low code. In this podcast, we'll hear from developers about their career journeys and how low code has enabled them to achieve new levels of success and innovation. So let's go. Hi, Clark. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, Feroz. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Thank you for
Yeah,
taking the time to be a guest on the podcast.
it is my pleasure.
We've known each other for a while, so I finally got your time to
I
get
know.
you on.
Yeah, exactly. I know 3 years, and I'm finally giving you 45 minutes of my
Yeah,
time.
exactly. So I
I'm
appreciate it.
not cheap, mate. I'm not cheap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be good to start with a little introduction to yourself, who you are, where you're from, for those who may not know you.
All right. So my name is Clark Swain. I live outside of Boston, and I helped start a company called Cloud Development Resources that eventually was acquired by EMIDS, and we were the premier low-code consultancy specializing in OutSystems in North America. Um, Prior to that, just as a sort of a quick background,
Yeah.
from a career standpoint, I started my career way back before you were born uh, with
I
what is
checked. I
now
think it was as I was born, actually.
as you were growing up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. In 1985 with
Yeah.
Accenture, I spent 8 years with them, four here in Boston and four based in London. I left there, came back to the States, and was a partner in a strategy consulting firm for another 8 years, and then ended up working for one of the first internet service providers, dial-up internet service
Wow.
providers, which you
Wow.
probably don't remember
I
either.
do. I do. I
Uh,
do. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
um, and then ended up after that stint was over, I ended up back with one of the guys I worked with from Accenture, who had started a business process management software company in the UK and was looking to expand in the US. So I took over that job, was there for about 8 years, and we sold to Tibco, which is a Silicon Valley-based um, infrastructure provider, and then went through another job, and then ended up at OutSystems, where I spent 3 years. The first two of those years were running an inside sales team here, out of the office here in Boston, and then the last year was head of the partner channel for North America. Eventually, I left OutSystems, and I had an opportunity to join a couple of folks who had started Cloud Development Resources, and I had some thoughts about the best way to build a partner organization in North America. So we went and did that, and grew it through the beginning of COVID and all that sort of stuff, an insane amount, and sold the company in 2021. After which I stayed for about 9 months, and then I have hung up my my consulting shoes for the last year and a half, and I've just been dabbling in doing side projects. So,
And can you
is
tell
that
us a bit about what you've been up to while you've been off?
back? Not traveling, sleeping in my own bed, and I've focused basically on myself. So I've
Yeah.
basically focused on. I joined a CrossFit box, and I've been doing CrossFit. Get some of the fat off the front of me, and build some muscles, so I might be able to
Amazing.
actually walk a little bit longer. So it's
Amazing.
been a good break.
That's good. That's good. So going back to when you started working for OutSystems directly, when you kind of took that role, had you heard of low code before? Were you aware of it?
Funnily, no, I hadn't. I hadn't heard of low code called low code, but low code is
Mm.
actually what used to be known as rapid application
Yeah.
development,
Yeah.
and it's been rebranded in a variety of different guises so that it's now low code.
Mm.
Um, or so I hadn't learned of it, and when the recruiter reached out to me and I started researching, I said, "Oh yeah, no, I know this stuff." What I didn't know was about OutSystems,
Mm.
and I didn't know sort of what their shtick was in the industry and how different they were from everybody else. But what I did find out is I was pretty quickly as I was going through that process was actually a lot of the low code providers started their lives as BPM companies.
Yes.
So if you look at
Yeah.
Pega and you look at Appian and a couple
Mm.
of the others, they really were business process management companies who rebranded and became low-code providers.
Yeah.
So I was quite familiar with the space and how it operated. And the offering that OutSystems had was intriguing to me because they were the only product at the time, and I still think I think they still are, that actually was based on commercially off-the-shelf technologies. So the
Mm.
OutSystems stack is basically the Microsoft stack,
Yeah.
and there's no sort of magic box that you have to go through from a translation engine standpoint, which is from a sales standpoint a very compelling argument to potential clients because you're not locking yourself into some sort of a proprietary technology as you move forward. Anyway, they were moving to Boston. They were moving their headquarters from their U.S. headquarters from
Yeah.
Atlanta to Boston. Wanted to set up an inside sales team. I was lucky enough to be tapped on the shoulder to take that, and we hired a bunch of people and started an inside sales team here in Boston. It was a really fun couple of years.
Yeah.
Really fun couple
Yeah.
of years.
And when you moved on and kind of started, joined CDR, what was the kind of thought process going into that?
So the problem. So take two steps back,
Yeah.
and this was true actually when in my career in the BPM world. Low code BPM products, but low code specifically, they're great tools, but they're nothing more than a toolbox.
Yeah.
Right? So somebody buys a platform and they have to go build a whole bunch of stuff on that platform. And some companies have accelerators and they do all these great things. But ultimately, if I'm a client and I want to buy this thing, my first question is, all right, I'm going to spend all this money, but how the heck am I going to get my first
Mhm.
project out the door? How am I
Yeah.
going to retrain my people? How am I going to, slip this seamlessly into the infrastructure that I've got? So that being said, the key to being successful is actually helping launch the first project and helping get or first two projects or first five projects.
Mhm.
It's really about a delivery capability as opposed to the technology. And OutSystems in particular at the time when I was with them had a fairly loose North American partner network.
Mhm.
They had a couple of the big, what are they called? The big five, now big three, whatever, the
Yeah.
big guys, the Accenture type people,
Yeah.
um, or type organizations. A couple of them had practices, but they were very sort of focused in
Mhm.
on specific industries and specific geographies. There was nobody who'd actually sort of said, "Hey, I'm going to go build a low code specific business or practice, and all I'm going to do is devote my skills to low code."
Yeah.
And I joined CDR. That was the goal of the founders, was to do that, and I agreed with it 100% and said, and the way to do this is to focus on a couple of things, not just I can build the fastest app for the cheapest amount of money, but more specifically, I can build the most business friendly, impactful app for a business. In a little amount of time,
Mhm.
for a reasonable amount of money. So the problem with the low code world typically has been people jumping in and saying I can do it cheaper, which is the problem in
Yeah.
the IT world, right? Which is why you saw all of the Indian IT organizations grew
Yeah.
like busters because they
Yeah.
jumped in. I can do this cheaper because the
Yeah.
resource is cheaper. The problem with that is that low code is not .NET. Low
Yeah.
code is not any of the sort of standard functionality or technologies that have been um, in play for the last 3, 4, 5 decades. It's a completely different approach, and you need a completely different approach in how you architect the applications and how you design the applications, how you build the applications. And so we felt strongly at CDR that if we built an organization that was focused purely on how to get the business value out of low code through designing apps, we would be successful in the marketplace. And it turned out that for us it was. So
Yeah.
I presume that the data says that we were right in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And in the time that you were with CDR, obviously there was challenges whilst growing a business, especially like things like pandemic, growing a team? What were some things that you found challenging? How did you overcome them?
So yeah, they were just we CDR actually officially started in early 2019. I joined actually late 2018. I joined in early 2019, in the first quarter of 2019. Aside from the standard startup challenges, is you got to find
Mhm.
clients, you got to
Yeah,
find people, you got to find knowledgeable people who can actually do it. We had an offshore model, so we had some people that were the sort of the higher level resources,
yeah,
if you will, were US based where possible. And then all the development work we did in an offshore center in the Philippines. And by doing that, we could arbitrage the labor cost and
mhm.
make the offering that much more attractive. Um, so you have all the startup costs. Right? I got to find
Yeah, yeah,
clients. I got to find, it was all self-funded, so we had to figure out how to keep people paid. We
yeah.
had to hire people, but we didn't want to hire full-time staff, which is, by
Mm.
the way, one of the reasons we found you guys,
Yes,
because truth be told, we were an ITRAC client
yeah.
for my entire. I mean, still, I believe they still are an ITRAC
Yes,
client.
they are. Yep.
Um, but it was incredibly important for us to be able to find experienced OutSystems people who we could leverage in under our badge as a contractor, for instance, so that we didn't have to actually hire them full time and carry that cost.
Yeah,
And we stumbled across you. I can't even remember how we found you guys, but we stumbled across you guys and said, wow, this is great. These folks know the OutSystems community. And one of the problems that you have with OutSystems specifically, but also with low code, is that there are very few experts.
yeah,
Lots of people who have certifications, few people who have used those certifications in any practical way. And frankly, that's the limiting factor to growth, is getting people who actually understand the technology and have faced the problems with integration and whatever, to make your project successful. So there was all of that, which is normal
mm,
sort of startup stuff, right?
yeah,
And how we're going to pay people and all that crap. And then the pandemic hit. Um,
yes.
and Um, it was, we all probably forget how, scary it was. I mean, we not fully forget, but it was a sort of, once in a lifetime, I hope,
Yeah.
moment. Um, we were freaked out about how do we keep our people employed? Is our clients going to continue to work with us? Um, and a couple of things happened. One was we reached out to both our employees and our clients and said, all right, we may have to sort of batten the hatches here for a while from a business standpoint, cash flow, et
Mm,
cetera. But we are going to ride this one out. We are going to
yeah,
make sure that we continue to deliver the work that we can deliver. We had just as a little anecdote, things were beginning to shut down. They hadn't fully shut down around the world yet. And I had this absolute panic that we had 100 or so people in the Philippines um, working a couple of different shifts off the same desktop computers
oh
in
wow.
the central office. And I was like, oh no, oh my God, we've got to do something. So we ended up having to order a whole bunch of laptops so that people could work remotely.
Oh
And
wow.
working remote in countries like the Philippines is not like working remote in Europe or in the US. The
Yeah,
living situations are very, very different. The Wi-Fi stability is very different. The whole culture of working from home is just, people tend to live in smaller places with larger
yeah.
families, et cetera. But we put in an order for PCs, and the last PC arrived at the office was the day the Philippine government announced shutdown.
Oh wow.
So we were able to get everybody a PC, and it took a day or two to sort of get folks
Yeah,
moving. I reached out to clients and called clients individually and talked to my staff, et cetera, and we tried to do our best to keep things moving. And people were incredibly appreciative of that. I had big clients call me, say, "You're the first person who's reached out and said this is what your sort of disaster recovery plan is."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, So that was all good. But the other thing, and that's great from an operational standpoint. But the
Yeah.
thing that really saved us was we had decided early on that we wanted to focus in on an industry that didn't have a whole lot of representation in the U.S. from a consulting standpoint and from a low-code standpoint, and that was healthcare and insurance. So it was like
Yeah.
providers like hospitals and doctor practices, et cetera,
Yeah.
as well as the health insurance market.
Mm.
Um, and one of our biggest clients was Humana, which is
Mm.
one of the largest health insurance
Yeah.
companies. Well, one of the big areas that um, saw the most growth in the beginning of the pandemic was healthcare.
Yes.
All of
Yeah.
a sudden, there was like stress on the healthcare system, et cetera. So simply by luck, we happened to be in the right place at the right
Yeah.
time. And we saw an incredible amount of growth actually within our chosen client base. Now we had clients outside of healthcare as well who continued to grow. The most important one was a company that turned, I can't mention their name, but a company
Yeah.
that turned to be, or not turned out, but a company that was one of the largest or is one of the largest producers of toilet paper in the
Wow.
and if you remember, I don't know,
Yes.
with you
Hot commodity that
okay,
was. Yes, it
the
was.
way
Yes. Yeah.
everybody was looking for loo rolls,
Yeah.
and so that business clearly wasn't suffering. So looking back on it, we were incredibly lucky. I think we played the hand of cards that we were dealt really well. We actually in 2021, which was the first, was it 2000? No, in 2000, when did the 2021 was the first big year of the pandemic, or 2000? No,
20,
2020.
2020. Yeah.
Yeah, 2020. 2020 was the first year of this pandemic. Sorry, I'm old. It's date. My mind hasn't been working. But in 2020, we actually ended up growing over 300%.
Wow. Wow.
Which was basically unheard of.
Yeah.
And we continue that growth into 2021 and beyond. So yeah, that was our pandemic experience. And during that time, we discovered that having people on site, you didn't have to. The traditional consulting businesses, you got to put some
Yeah.
people on site and you got to
Yeah.
do all. Well, forced by the pandemic to do things remotely, Zoom and
Yeah.
Teams and everything else, our business model worked. It was
Yeah.
proven. So we were pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Pretty lucky.
Yeah. And after building kind of such a successful business, fully focused on low code, and obviously low code is kind of really growing. What do you think's driving that?
Well, I think the drivers of low code today are still the same that they've always been. I think that it's largely driven by speed. The speed of change in the business world has gotten to a point where IT departments cannot innovate and get new functions and features and things like that out fast enough. Plus, it costs way too much money. If you try and add something to this big behemoth system that's been run, particularly in healthcare, these big behemoth systems that have been
Yeah.
running for decades, it's a really challenging thing to do. So what we found was many of the companies, the key thing that was driving them was the need for the business to have faster access to new applications, new features, et cetera. Not because they were trying to abandon everything that they've done in the last,
Mm.
30 or 40 or 50 years, but they needed new front ends, for instance. They needed a new, we had a client that was that was in the health in the health insurance, sorry, health delivery market. They were a
Yeah.
provider. What they wanted was they wanted to create an app for their patients to be able to go in and basically do all their own paperwork prior to showing up at the facility, and also to remotely monitor some of the things that they needed to monitor. So if I'm a patient, their target patients were all
Mhm.
Medicare recipients. It was a population of over 65. And it needed to be simple, like
Mm.
super simple. These are technology adverse people to begin with. And we built them an app that was super simple for those kinds of people to use. But then what we also did was we added to that app the ability to collect things like blood pressure and all these
Mm.
remote sensors and tie all that stuff in. And what it did was it dramatically reduced the amount of time people needed to spend in the office,
Yeah,
which during a COVID type situation is pretty
yeah,
important. Right? You want to
yeah,
minimize time in front of people, but it also freed up the practitioners on the back end, not having to do some of the the day-to-day sort of tasks, follow-up tasks after they see a patient. It was all done on sort of an iPad or a handheld device, either by the patient and then picked up by the practitioner. So that kind of functionality was needed sort of across the board, and
yeah,
it's really hard for people to innovate if they can't deliver something fast and show the end users, hey, this is what you're going to get. And low code in
yeah,
particular is a particularly great tool to allow people to innovate quickly and to show, this is what you're going to get, this is how it
yeah.
works. um, did I answer the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah. And in the kind of, you gave an example there already, but was there any other kind of examples you can give, like that projects you worked on, which, kind of were really kind of, you made the most of the low code tool?
Right. Well, a lot of so we had another client that was in the telecommunications business, and they ran services, engineers basically for cell phone towers, and they would contract out to the big cell phone providers, repair work. So they had across the country, they've got thousands of service engineers running around who needed to go from a cell phone tower that was for AT&T to one that was for Verizon to one that was for some Sprint
Mm.
or whoever else. And the logistics of how you build a, a service app that is usable um, by the service technicians that can handle all of those opportunities in a quick, fast, easy to use way, becomes a real challenge, right? Particularly when you think about human factor type things like, how is this person going to use this app when they're out in the middle of 40-degree below weather, and they're at top of a cell tower, right? So it's
Mm.
got to have. It's not just that I want to have a handheld device that I can do this app in. I've got to be able to do it quickly when I'm wearing thick gloves and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
So there was a lot of that kind of innovation going on. The other thing was we had a bunch of clients who were actually quite happy with their back end system. So they may be happy with their patient care system, but what they hated was the front end um, of that system. And one of the great
yeah,
things about OutSystems and low code in general is that you can actually, because of the integration capabilities of the platform itself, you can actually use it as to build a new front end. So you don't change anything on the back end. You build a new front end, you build new screens, you build them, the user interface can change entirely, but all you're doing is literally putting a wrapper on an existing system. And it's a very quick and effective and cost-effective way of providing a new user experience to the end users. So the business users at the end of the day are really happy because
yeah,
of this new thing, but you're also not going back and redesigning a whole patient care system, for instance.
yeah, yeah,
You're just linking into the one that's already there.
yeah.
So that was the kind of stuff that was driving most of the clients that we had.
Mm.
I can see that as things moved on, that people started saying, okay, well, maybe I can use the platform because it's quick and easy to use. I can use it to start building or replacing parts of my back-end systems. And
Mm.
that started to happen, but it's only really now beginning to take form, because I think there's some folks who have issues about whether low code can actually handle the volume, um,
Yeah.
and the handle the volume of a back-end system. Can they handle that number of transactions? Can they handle that
Mm.
um, the usage patterns and all that sort of stuff? So anyway, that's going on now. That's what's driving
Yeah.
it. The other thing that's driving, the last thing I'd say is the other thing that's driving low code is the lack of reasonable skills. Um, Most big companies have these enormous investments in systems for years and years and years,
Mm.
um, and they can't get UI UX people to work for them. And you know this as well as I do. The
Yes.
price of some of these skills has in the marketplace has
Yes.
shot up
Yeah.
dramatically. So if I'm, industry leader A, and I am looking for a UI UX person, I may have to pay 3 times the amount for that person to keep them, but then I can't keep them because the guy next door starts offering them more money. So
Yeah,
the
yeah,
real challenge with trying to keep people with skills, and in the OutSystems world, that was definitely happening.
yeah.
People who had the experience were jumping jobs like you wouldn't believe. Now, I
Mm.
think that's calmed down quite a bit in the
Yes.
last 18 months or so. But the need for um, new practitioners who didn't have, or it wasn't required to have 30 years of .NET experience or 20
Yeah,
years of .NET experience was extremely high. And
yeah,
so people were looking for a platform that would allow them to train new people up relatively quickly and give them the experience that they needed.
yeah, yeah. And I think, yeah, like from when we first spoke, it was a very candidate driven market to where it is now. I think things have leveled out
Yeah, I
quite a
know. I
bit.
left. I left while it was still a candidate-driven market.
Yeah, you did actually. Yeah,
We,
that is
we
true.
would have
That is
long conversations about this person wants more money.
yes, I
Um,
used to I dread those emails and phone calls.
yeah. But joking aside, I mean, people were doing what you would expect them to do,
Yeah,
right? And people
yeah,
act in their own self-interest, and things go in swings and roundabouts, and
yeah,
we've swung back,
yeah,
presumably, and it will swing again,
yeah,
at some point in time.
yeah,
So the good news is, I think that the hype around low code um, is beginning to be realized, right? So there's actually more um, success on the ground in meaningful ways. So it's not just a tool. One of the problems that when I first started at OutSystems, a lot of people looked at low code, and the companies that were using it for simple, non critical mission systems, or mission critical systems. So they'd use it to build an expense reporting app or a time reporting app or something, which is all well and good. You can do that, but
yeah,
that sits over to the side, right? It's not core to your business. I think what people are seeing now is that you can actually use the platform for building mission critical systems and have tremendous success from uh, from how long it takes to build those system standpoint, and a cost standpoint as well. Um, the real challenge is going to be, when the next hype thing comes, and the next hype thing is AI, right? So,
yes,
oh my God, what is AI is going to change everything, and et cetera. That we're all going to be out of jobs, and there are going to be bots doing our
yeah, yeah, yeah,
work. And there may well be something to that. In certain industries, there's very clearly something to that.
yeah,
Is it something that's going to completely change the way the world operates in the next 18 months? I don't know.
yeah,
Remains to be seen. But like many things, I think that it will have an impact. It sounds like it's a good thing, from what I can read about it and from
yeah,
what I see how people are using it, but it's not necessarily something that's applicable for virtually everything. The challenge is, how do you we use low code with AI to actually create a better business solution for somebody. And that stuff is going to take time.
yeah,
There are people who are experienced in it. There are it, it's a lot to say, I'm going to turn my business over to something like this.
mm,
So I believe, hype aside, I believe that this kind of stuff is going to be very important as we move forward, and the skills are absolutely needed. But the world's not going to come to an end tomorrow. Um,
yeah.
you know, you'll have a job, Feroz. You'll have
Yeah, thank you.
yeah.
I was a bit worried.
Yeah. We don't need people from recruiting. AI will do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So
And just going into my next question, obviously built up CDR, it grew really well, and it's only 2023, so it's quite a young company even when you decided to sell. So why? What was the decision behind that?
so there are a couple of decisions. First of all, when we built the company, we knew that there was going to be a market for people who wanted to get into low code, people who wanted
Yeah.
to get into low code and didn't want to build it themselves. So from the very beginning, we had that vision that
Okay.
that's what we're going to do, right? Now we didn't know who that market was. As it turned out, that market was largely Indian-based
Mhm.
consultancies who were finding that their traditional business of providing cheaper resources for standard
Yeah.
technologies had become so commoditized that it was sort of impossible for them to make
Mhm.
make the kind of margins that they needed to make. Um, so we knew that that was going to be the case. Everything we did as we built the business was in support of someday we were going to do that. And one of the reasons we used contractors a lot was because we didn't want to carry,
Yeah.
the cost of people as the business, goes up
Yeah.
and down. We didn't want to carry the cost of people. Um, Now, having said that, the other thing was, we were lucky with timing. We had a great story coming out of the pandemic. We had,
Yeah.
tailwinds behind us. And we reached out to some advisors to help us, and we did a whole marketing campaign, et cetera. And there were a lot of people interested, like a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, so the yeah, and I think we were one of the first, if not and certainly in North America, we were one of the first to be acquired. Um, and we were pretty pleased about that.
Yeah.
We did a good job. I think a bunch of our competitors have since been acquired or are
Yeah.
in the process of being acquired. The business has changed in the last year and a half, so it's gotten back to more towards a sort of a
Yes.
normal
Yeah.
cycle,
Yeah.
based on the way the rest of the world is going. But the key for us was realizing that we weren't building this company for us. We were building this company for a greater purpose. And the greater
Mm.
purpose was to hopefully sell it and make an opportunity for everybody else. And that's fundamentally what, aside from the economics of you sell your company, you make some money, et cetera.
Yeah.
Um, the way this, we believe that our business model was the right model, but it was damn hard. It was really hard
Mm.
every single day, like
Yeah.
it gets tiring, and at some point you need or particularly with a small company like CDR, we had to build our client base. We
Mm.
didn't have the cross-selling capability.
Yeah.
Like, you go to an Accenture or KPMG or some of these bigger consulting firms, they've got a client base that you could sell
Yeah.
across. We didn't have a client base to sell across, so we had to find, it was a battle for every single client that we got. Um, and ultimately getting the leads of where you're going to do the work, you need to find a place to get those leads, and bigger companies have those kinds of clients
Yeah.
that you can latch onto.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that you've kind of been through that process, is there any kind of advice, insights you could give others who might be considering something similar?
Uh, um, the only advice I can say is it was a fascinating process. I'd been working in technology. I've been involved in a number of. This was not the first company I've been involved in that was sold. It's the first company that I was on the front end of the transaction,
Yeah.
uh, and that is what sort of in and of itself has a whole bunch of interesting learnings. All I can say is if you keep your eye on making sure what you deliver to clients is the best that you can possibly do, and you're making some money doing it, everything else will take care of itself. Because everything else becomes just you know, the due diligence process, the marketing of
Mm.
yourself, all that sort of stuff. It's all sort of just I don't want to say it's a game, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The reason people are interested is because we kept our eyes on delivering the best work that we
Yeah.
could to clients. So we kept our clients for a long time. We knew how to, meet their needs, and we proved our business model time and time and time again. Long as you keep your focus on that, the rest of the stuff will take care of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be ups and downs, but it'll eventually
Yeah.
take care of itself.
You'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there definitely.
And now obviously you've had some time off, yeah, to kind of, do other things and, uh recharge. What's your kind of
Yes, I have recharged. I've
Yeah, so
recharged.
what's your kind of, plans and aspirations moving ahead?
So right now I'm doing some consulting. I'm spending about half time doing consulting, working with other companies who are looking to um, build their consulting practices, not necessarily just in low code,
Mm.
but um, I'm doing some work with some sales development, how to get sales teams to be more effective, et cetera. I'm not, I'm looking for at some point the next opportunity will pass in front of me,
Yeah.
but I'm not actively, running around saying, oh, what,
Yeah.
I gotta have this next thing. I'm looking for stuff that fundamentally interests me and excites me. And that typically it probably has something to do with the technology field, absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably has something to do with low code, um, and it probably has something to do with sales, because I think that how you actually package what you do and sell it to somebody else is is key to the process. Lots of people can figure out how to deliver. Very few people can figure out how to sell properly. And they all need to work in conjunction. It's not just about
Yeah.
promising somebody something that you can't deliver on. But technologists are not the best salespeople in the world. Um,
Yeah.
um, so that's where I'm headed right now. Um, you know, Trying to leverage the experience that I've had, maybe maybe at a slower pace than what I've had in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. You can be a bit more picky and really wait for the right thing to come across you
Yeah, I
that
mean, if the
yeah.
right thing comes, I'm all in. But
Mm.
right now I'm enjoying this. I 35, 40 years of getting on airplanes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't get on airplanes all the time anymore, so it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Um, we've known each other for a while now, and when I saw you do a post on LinkedIn that you were kind of back, I thought, surely he's got some time to record with me now.
I do, yeah, yeah, I know, I know.
So I'll
I
straight on
did,
to you on WhatsApp.
I did spend a very large period of time sort of not answering anything and not responding. So, um, yeah, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Amazing. Well, I look forward to following what you do ahead, and we'll keep in touch anyway. So thanks for your time.
All right, thanks, Feroz.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Clark.
All right, be well.
You too.